Welcome to AZ TechCast, sponsored by the Arizona Technology Council, with your hosts, Steve Zylstra and Karen Nowicki. AZ TechCast is dedicated to covering innovation and technology in Arizona and beyond. Broadcasted monthly, AZ TechCast invites leading experts to have real conversations about what is happening in the tech sector across the state of Arizona. From regional news to innovative startups, companies, and emerging technologies, AZ TechCast covers the critical issues and economic trends propelling the state's growing tech ecosystem.
Arizona's Rural Broadband Initiative endeavors to expand broadband services in underserved rural areas across the state. The initiative envisions a future where every Arizonan, regardless of their location, is empowered by high-speed internet, breaking barriers and fostering a more inclusive and connected society. I'm Karen Nowicki, president and owner of Phoenix Business Radio X, and I'd like to welcome you to AZ TechCast, sponsored by Arizona Technology Council. AZ TechCast is dedicated to covering innovation and technology in Arizona and beyond. And this month, we are looking forward to having a well-rounded conversation with our panel of guests, and I hope you'll help me welcome them right now. We have Kelly LeBlanc, Chief Marketing and Product Officer, IP Infusion. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you.
So happy to have you. And you're in, did you say Santa Clara, California?
That's correct. Yes.
Well, we appreciate you making time for us today. And we also have Sandeep Bhowmik, Vice President of Infrastructure and State Broadband Director with Arizona Commerce Authority, one of our studio sponsors for this broadcast as well. Welcome, Sandeep.
Thank you, Karen. My name is Sandeep Bhowmik, State Broadband Director here at Arizona Commerce Authority. I oversee the broadband expansion and digital equity portfolio here in the state.
And it's been how long that you've been with Arizona Commerce Authority in that role?
So I started as assistant broadband director almost 1.5 years ago, and then got promoted last year, right before our state mapping challenge, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on, which resulted in another $220 million extra funding we got. So promoted as a broadband director at that time frame.
Fantastic. And Kelly, how about for you, before we introduce you to Seth and Steve over here with me as well? How long have you been with your organization?
Well, I've been here for about 1.5 years. And so I've been overseeing all of the marketing and product management for IP Infusion. And we've been in business for about 25 years now as a networking software vendor specializing in open networking products.
Okay, we brought the right team today to have this conversation. And in the studio with Steve and I is Steph Holler. He is the Director of Sales with Western Region EPS Global. Welcome, Seth.
Thank you. So yeah, EPS Global is a tier 1 distributor. And we're really specialized in the white box open networking space. So IP Infusion is one of our partners for the software, and then we put their software on hardware and help customers kind of put this all together. Where the rubber meets the road here is in this Rural Broadband Initiative, how to help customers get product at a much lower price, but it's still tier 1 product, and then we help them put it all together. There's a lot of fear in doing this, moving away from some of the tier 1 brands, moving into this space. We help them get over that fear. So I'm a 25-year resident of Arizona, a proud resident, property owner here. And the rural broadband thing to me is, how do we spend this money? How do we work with Sandeep and the internet service providers to get this money so that they can provide this broadband that really is by law needs to be provided, but they could do it in a more economical way than they've done it before.
Yeah. And how long have you been in your role?
So I've been at EPS for 10 years. It's actually the longest company I've ever worked for.
I thought you were going to say 1.5 years.
No, 10 years. We're actually headquartered in Dublin, Ireland. We founded in 1999. The guys that founded it still run it. My boss opened the shop here. His name's Alan Fagan. He opened shop here in 2009. I had met him several years before. I was in a transition phase in 2013, and he reached out, and we got together, and I started running the West. And when we first started, we're transceiver distributors, a company called Finisar, which is the #1 manufacturer of transceivers. And then we moved into this disaggregated white box networking space to deliver a product, again, that is third of the cost but you're getting the same quality working with our partners like IP Infusion for the software piece of it. And then what we're doing again is we're putting all together and delivering a solution. So we're really a value-added distributor.
Yeah.
And you would know of some other big distributors here in the Valley. I worked for them as well at one point. But this is much more focused.
Very good.
Yep.
Very good. Well, I love the brief introductions, and we'll make sure that we hear more from each of you as we get engaged in this conversation. And we also need to hear from Steve Zylstra, our co-host. Tell us a little bit about you and Arizona Technology Council.
Sure. Well, I'm President and CEO of the Arizona Technology Council and our foundation called the SciTech Institute. I guess I've been in Arizona 33 years in total, 2 different times, but 33 years. I've been at the Arizona Tech Council for 16 years as President and CEO. And a little bit about the Tech Council. We're a statewide organization. We have offices in Phoenix and Tucson. We're a trade association that serves science and technology-based enterprises. We do public policy advocacy, so that we're sort of the voice and the face of the tech industry. We do between 100 and 150 events a year, which is like 3 a week. We have lots of publications, a magazine, newsletter, 2 podcasts, and many other reports. And we negotiate lower cost products and services for our members. So we run an association health plan, we run a 401k program, and we're organized around committees. We have 13 standing committees.
Mm-hmm. And this conversation today is important for Arizona because why? I'm throwing that out to all of you. Why is this such an important conversation for all Arizonans?
So I'll let Sandeep talk in a second, but the reality is the law had changed so that we must provide internet to everybody in what's called 100 over 100. So 100 meg up, 100 meg down. For example, at home, I've got gigabit and I've got Cox gigabit. So I have synchronous 1 gig up and down. It's great. I live in I'm in Chandler, right? It's easy to get me internet service. The problem is when you get out into the reses and some of the more rural areas, there's a real challenge in physically getting it out there. And there's a significant cost in getting it out there, but it's the law. You got to do it, right? So you have these internet service providers trying to figure this out. And how do they do it, again, economically and by the law, working with Sandeep's team to make sure that part's being done as well. So there's construction, there's finance, there's all kinds of issues that aren't easily resolved. And it's all based on RFQs. You have to submit and then prove you're going to do it. And that's where Sandeep gets involved.
Let me just add that it was really it was COVID that perpetuated these kinds of initiatives in that, as we know, we were all working from home. So the need for broadband was much more important. We had 100,000 or more kids who could not essentially participate in school because they either didn't have a laptop or they didn't have broadband access. And so the entire country realized this was a major issue. So Arizona's been investing in it, and the federal government's been investing in it, and Sandeep is managing all that.
And from your perspective, Kelly and Sandeep, where do you see that this is of critical importance to all Arizonans?
I can say from my perspective as a networking software vendor, we feel that this is an extremely important program because it should help to address and solve these broader access programs that the open market might be slow to be able to address right now. So really appreciative of this initiative.
So Karen, the way I see the broadband industry, as Steve mentioned, it evolved. So Arizona Broadband Office, it's fairly new. We established the office in 2019. Folks, the leadership team at Arizona Commerce Authority realized that how important it is to have broadband connectivity in rural Arizona because we are the de facto institute which bring business to the state. From that need, we founded Broadband Office as part of Arizona Commerce Authority. So from 2019 to 2020 end or 2021 end, broadband, we basically partnered up as a director position. We basically partnered up with the private industry that how we can expand broadband here in Arizona. The whole thing changed right after COVID when federal government started investing money. So the first tranche of money came here at Arizona when we received $190 million from the capital funding project, and then governor allocated $100 million for broadband expansion. Right around the same time I came on board as an assistant broadband director, played an instrumental role to distribute that $100 million. And now, as Seth mentioned, the IIJA, it's a law, so we have to cover all the 318,000 unserved and underserved households here in Arizona. So last year we received, this year we got a confirmation that we are going to get $993 million in funding for BEAD to cover this 318,000. So it's rapidly went from a advocacy to an actual implementation. And my background came in, I had a degree in bachelor's and master's degree in telecommunication and electrical engineering focused, worked in telecommunication company. This is my first government job, quote unquote, outside of military. So I worked for AT&T, Verizon, went back to AT&T. Last position was basically heading AT&T's E911 project, the FirstNet project here in Arizona. So coming from the networking background, this is actually like my own group of people, like the background Seth came from or Kelly came from. This is exactly what I did for vendors, selecting product and deploying it for our E911 project. So yeah, so it's all coming together. The amount of finance experience I had, the amount of engineering experience I had, we will go through a RFP process. So this is all coming together right now as we are talking a massive amount of funding and also maintaining the network standard, which is given by federal government.
Mhm.
So, Sandeep, we talked early on about the rural broadband initiative. Can you give us some details about what that initiative is and anyone else who has input into that? And by the way, our listeners may not know what IIJA is, so it'd be great if you could define that for them.
Absolutely. So two major investment on the rural broadband. And when I say rural broadband, there are rural places here in Maricopa County too. There are rural places in Pinal County. So Arizona's geography is a little bit different. So to start with, I would say the IIJA, it's a bill. It's signed by Biden administration. So basically, which allocated $43 billion for high-speed broadband expansion here in the country. That includes all 50 state and U.S. territories. The way this money was divided between the state based on how many unserved and underserved location we have here in every single state. So the state received from somewhere between $3 billion to $1 billion, in some cases less than like $250 million. It all depends how many served and unserved location you have. So based on the prediction from last year from our office, different nonprofit organizations and different for-profit consulting companies, we are supposed to receive somewhere between 720 to 780. However, FCC gave us an opportunity to challenge the state broadband map, and we're able to add 60,000 more addresses. That added another $220 million and ended up with $993 million in funding. So from my point of view, what I think that when it comes to the broadband funding and the addresses we have here in the state, the KPI is connecting all these 318,000 households with a network standard, which is 100 by 20, 100 Mbps download and 20 Mbps upload. It was little different than 100 by 100 symmetrical, which was implemented through capital funding project, the $100 million investment we did. But with this total funding of almost so the BEAD funding has a 25% matching on top of that too. So with $1.25 billion investment here in the state and another $100 million investment we did, we are hoping to cover all the Arizona household, including all the rural areas and the tribal household with high-speed broadband connectivity. So that's the target for next few years. And right now we are going through the planning process. But before we go explore what we are doing on the planning process, I would like to see if Kelly and Seth wants to add anything on top of
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
One quick question.
Go ahead.
BEAD, is that an acronym for something?
Yes, it's actually Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. It's a very cool name, and sometimes it creates a lot of confusion. So when I'm talking to our ISPs, sometimes we say, "Wait, are you going to bead on bead? So it creates a lot of confusion. So we are making confusion between BID and versus BEAD. So trying to resolve that in a different state.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You hear these numbers, right? $1.25 billion. Oh my God. Well, that should be easy to get broadband access to everybody that needs it. But it's only 318,000 homes. There, in some areas, it could cost $10,000 per home to get broadband internet there because of where it is, right? You have to run fiber from point A to point B. And it's, again, I talked about construction. In some cases, you're blasting through a mountain, right? To be able to do it via radio wave is not that simple either. It's very expensive kind of stuff to do it. So because it needs to be done, we want to make sure that as a state and even in the nation, we're spending the money the best way out, right? So clearly you have these tier one companies that the ISPs, internet service providers, have been using for a long time. You have a couple of problems going on. One, availability is an issue, right? You're still having a hard time. The tier ones are servicing the hyperscalers, the Metas, the Apples, those guys, right? So you have an availability problem, you have a cost problem. What we figured out over the last 10 years is how to solve that problem using, again, the same tier one equipment and software to put a solution together, to go to an ISP and go, it's okay. We got you. We can get you there, right? And for a lot less, so you can stretch it out farther. And that's really what it's about. It's using those dollars the best you can to service these 318,000 homes. To Steve's point, you had kids that could not do their homework. They were literally having to drive 20, 30 miles somewhere to get an internet connection to do their homework, right? That's the problem we have to solve. So there is a chasm that has to get crossed from branded to white box, right? Companies like IPM Fusion, they provide a lot of support, front-end support. We do a lot of pre-sale support, make sure the ISPs are getting the right boxes. We work with a couple different vendors to make sure that the technology is there at the right pricing. And then we work with companies like IPM Fusion, and then we put it all together. So I was at a show a couple weeks ago called Wispapalooza. Kind of a funny name for a show. WISPs are wireless internet service providers, and they're having the same problem too, by the way. And I had a gentleman walk up to me. He's like, I just don't know what to do. How do I do this? My engineers are telling me I have to, but I don't know how to do it. I'm like, call me on Monday and we'll start working with you and we'll tell you how to do it, right? Get the mystery out of it, the fear out of it, so these dollars can be spent properly, right? And then they can help Sandeep and all these homes get the service that they need. You have to think about internet now as more like a utility, right?
Yes.
When you walk up to your faucet and you just expect water to come out. When you go in your house and hit the switch, you expect the lights to come on, right? When you log on at home, you expect the internet to be there and you expect it to be good enough to do what you needed to do, right? Not everybody needs 30 connected devices and 4K and all that stuff, but they certainly need to get on and be able to get email and do all the things they need to do.
Quick follow-up for you. So you referred to, the terrain we have in Arizona, the very remote places where people live, and the exceptional costs associated with bringing the internet. In those specific situation, why wouldn't we use Starlink?
It's a great question. So again, Starlink is not that economical either. Like the military uses Starlink, right? Starlink is great for a point-to-point, very small use of, hey, I need to communicate real quick. It's kind of a burst technology, right? Versus an always-on. Again, I go put my plug into my wall and I have electricity, right? So in some cases, you don't have a choice. There's no other way to get it there. But again, it's expensive to set it up too.
Right. Thank you. And Kelly, anything to add to that?
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to build a little bit out on your point, Steve, because as you mentioned, this problem which compounded during the pandemic, that's one of the reasons why we've had the great pleasure to work with Seth and EPS during this time, because our value proposition is time to market in addition to cost effectiveness. So not only do we need to make sure that everyone has internet connection in their home, but we need to make sure they have it now. We can't have kids waiting on delay to do their homework. So what was happening at this time is that communities were calling the traditional vendors and being told that they had to wait 18 months to 2 years to get their equipment, and that's just not going to work. So we worked very closely with EPS Global to make sure that there was a diversified supply chain so we could provide our software on a variety and choice of hardware that EPS Global also offered. And we could reduce the time to market from 18 months to 2 years to, in some cases, 1 to 2 days. So, we were really proud of this, and that's what helped us to get our name out during these times, even more so than before, simply because we're giving people access now.
Yeah, I mean, the supply chain shortage revealed a lot of challenges, right? But not everybody had 100% supply chain shortages. It was very focused in the Broadcom chipset, things like that. And again, the tier ones were literally buying more than they needed. Broadcom at one point was buying more capacity than they could get because of the automotive thing. So it was this kind of weird trifecta of things going on, right? Because of a lot of the money that was flowing into homes, they were going out buying cars, and the cars now need 100 chips in them too, right? And so then Broadcom was used to getting their chips done 3 months at a time, and all of a sudden the automotive industry is booking out 2 years at a time. There's no capacity, which hence why we have this wonderful factory going up right in northern or western valley here. So and plus the stuff that's going on in Intel. I mean, all that's very impactful for the future. What's happening? It's great to see it happening here, but at the same time, we were able to work with these other manufacturers and go, well, I need product. And one of the things that we do a little bit different than other distributors is we'll put it on the shelf, right? To give that more closer to just in time. I think, Kelly, we had one we worked with where customer called up. I think from the time the first phone call happened to the time the full deployment was 3 months.
That's right.
Right. And that was during the pandemic with a complete chip shortage because we made investments and put the product on the shelf and worked with the right hardware partners and partners like IP Fusion to get it done. Right. So we're on the not complete other side of it now, right? We're still, people don't understand, we still are in a little bit of a chip shortage. It's still happening. Not as bad. Lead times and some stuff is starting to push out because demand is starting to happen again. And so we're going to see a little bit of a crunch, but again, we're going to buy our way into solving the problem by putting the parts on the shelf. Mm-hmm. So I think we've got Kelly, probably 20 or 30 engagements on a regular basis.
Yes, and we've publicly announced around 14 of them already this year.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
So
regarding the initiative, the Rural Broadband Initiative, what's the ultimate impact on Arizona, and especially on the tribal lands where our indigenous people live, because those are some of the most remote places, underserved areas. And of course, they all need internet as well.
Sure. I mean, I just want to add what Seth said and Kelly mentioned. To go back to the financial study, as I told you all that we are going through a planning process. So the whole BEAD funding has 3 different milestones. The first one was 5-year action plan, and then the initial plan and the final plan. So the 5-year action plan for the state of Arizona was due in August. So basically talks about what's the situation of broadband here in the state. If we made any investment, if we have any experience deploying broadband infrastructure before, basically a current status of state broadband office and what should be our engagement plan, et cetera, et cetera. The initial plan is more in depth. We recently published the initial plan, volume 1, which describes how the communities can submit a challenge against the state to the state that if we are missing any addresses or any broadband service availability data in their community, and we can correct that to make sure there are no household we are leaving behind. So with that process, probably we'll add few more thousand households with that 318. And the volume 2, which is actually coming online next week, most probably, that will talk about subgrantee selection process, the technology, the open technology we are talking about. And this is a public platform. So I would like to clarify one debate, and that is we are talking about open technology, what Seth is working on or Kelly is working on, the white box technology. This is not same as open access fiber network. It's a controversial topic. So I just wanted to make sure these are not same thing for our audiences.
Right.
And going forward, the initial plan will have all type of technology we are we are going to support. Now, this is connected, so I would like to mention this, that supply chain is definitely going to be an issue, even though we are going to house the largest semiconductor factory in the world in our state. This is going to be an ongoing issue, and on top of that, makes things more complicated. Of course, we have Buy American Act. The 55% of the equipment need to be manufactured and basically assembled together here in US. And at the same time, when all the states are investing all this $43 billion, it's going to be a race between the equipment company versus ISP. This is definitely going to be a challenge. So we mentioned that and actually talked about few solutions that how we can work as a state broadband office with private sector to mitigate that situation. So I would invite everyone to have a look at the volume 2, and it's open for public comment for 30 days. As an ISP, as an industry, you can provide your feedback. And also, we hold monthly roundtable to talk about these issues with the industry, which include ISPs and equipment manufacturer. So we discuss about this thing and took a live feedback from the industry. Going back to the cost, what Seth mentioned, that there might be household which might need $10,000 to connect. Steve, we are going through a financial analytics right now, how to deploy broadband using this $1 billion in this 318,000 household. We found household which needs approximately $300,000 to connect. So there is no way we'll be doing fiber there. Of course, fiber is a preferred choice, but what we see ourselves doing, probably a mix of technologies, including 70% probably fiber, 25% fixed wireless, and 5% satellite. As of right now, we talked about a Starlink. You mentioned a very great point. The Starlink is the only company. It's not a reliable broadband delivery. Satellite, as per the definition from Department of Commerce, is not a reliable broadband delivery. But law says that we have to cover all these households. So there will be 4,000, 5,000 households, probably a little bit more than that here in the state, and a lot of them probably going to be in the tribal land. We have to go with the satellite. And as of right now, today, the 120 megabyte, 120 Mbps download and upload speed can only be fulfilled by Starlink. There is no other company out there who can meet this requirement. So we are having discussion with the Starlink, actually all the broadband office. They are changing their business model a little bit too, because this is a good way to connect the community. So as per our development with them and all the broadband office, they're introducing a low-cost plan for the community. Their current plan is right now 220 Mbps and 25 Mbps download with $120. So they are trying to introduce something which can meet the ACP requirement, which provides the tribal household $75 discount from their bill, and regular household outside of tribe $30. And they recently got approved for the ACP by federal government. So definitely that plays a vital role. The challenge in front of us, we have, as a private company, Starlink or any other satellite company have to deploy a massive amount of ground station, and that's the challenge ahead of us. However, I would say that our state is in a little bit better situation because we are one of the few states who deployed a open access, non-discriminatory middle mile network on our state Department of Transportation right of way. So we spent it approximately close to $500 million, and we have middle mile access on I-17, I-19, and I-40 is going construction next month. So this access will make sure if there is a space needed to deploy this ground station, because these are basically ginormous in size, they can go to rural areas and they will still have this backbone middle mile fiber connected to them. So there are a lot of steps has been taken, which is being fruitful right now during the BEAD deployment process. And tribal entities are going to be one of the beneficiary out of this all initiative we are taking right now. And tribal broadband is a priority for Arizona Commerce Authority. And I would like to highlight that it's one of the major priority, overall broadband and tribal broadband for Governor Hobbs. So we are definitely taking that in a different direction. And of course, not to mention the tribal data sovereignty.
Just a follow-up comment to something Sandeep said about supply chain. Depending on whose data you believe, only between 12 and 17% of semiconductors today are manufactured in the United States. So when you have this Buy America requirement, and a fairly small number of semiconductors are manufactured in the U.S., that leads to the supply chain issue. Now, TSMC and Intel are building new facilities that will add to capacity. There are other facilities being built around the United States and Texas and Idaho and New York, but we've got a long way to go. The country's goal is to get back to where we once were, which is about 37% of the world's semiconductors to be manufactured here in the U.S.
And about how far off do you anticipate that we are back to that percentage?
It's a long time.
It's a
Yeah.
long time. Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
Years and years.
Yeah.
Years
yeah,
and
yeah,
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like decade kind of stuff.
Mm.
Decades. Yeah.
Mhm.
Look, the great thing about it is we are focused on it and headed that way, and trying to pull down our reliance on some of the overseas stuff, right? We're seeing a lot of shift back to Mexico,
Mhm.
right? So what was called for a brief time onshoring,
Now
right?
nearshoring.
Now nearshoring. Right?
Right.
So we're starting to see more of that. Some of the products that I'm getting, I've got a couple of my suppliers on like they're called direct attach cables, where I'm buying primarily out of Mexico now, right? So I can bring them over here for a myriad of reasons. One, they can build them faster, they can get them to me faster. Obviously, no tariffs, all that kind of stuff. So everybody kind of benefits up and down the food chain. But this is going to be a problem for a while. I mean, we lost focus on it, right? Due primarily to a cost sensitivity issue, right? Everybody wanted an iPhone for free. Okay. Right. We wanted our TV. Those of us who still have a TV on the wall, right? We wanted it at lower cost. So, there's going to be some pain there in that too, right? We're going to have to kind of adjust our standard to what products are worth to buy them. But I think you're already seeing that, right? You're starting to see, there was inflation, but I think we're starting to accept that certain products cost a little more now,
Mhm.
and that's okay. I mean, they have more value to them anyway,
Mhm.
right? At the same time, you have some of these manufacturers in the space that we're working on or with that their stuff is really expensive, and the stuff that goes in the box is really not that different than the stuff. Matter of fact, it's designed and built in some of the same factories, right? So it's tier one equipment. If you take the lid off, it looks the same, right? But you're not getting that name. So the question is, do you have to have that name? And in this initiative where you need to maximize your spend, not necessarily. As long as the equipment has the right support, is the right technology, and can perform what it needs to do, why are you spending that much?
Reliable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Shall we go to our little commercial
Sounds
before
good.
we move
Sure.
on? All right, let's do that. We want to have an opportunity to thank Arizona Commerce Authority, who is AZ TechCast 2023 innovation sponsor. So we'd like to take a moment and hear from them.
Our streamlined pro-business approach helps you achieve more by putting less between you and future success. Less red tape, lower taxes, less distance separating you from the tech leaders of tomorrow. This innovative ecosystem will supply your business with tools and resources to compete in the 21st century and beyond. But your future is more than just business success. In Arizona, the lifestyle you want is at your fingertips. Explore cities known for their Southwest heritage and modern vision. Enjoy beautiful scenery and endless outdoor activities on land, water, or snow. And if you're looking for a little friendly competition, we've got plenty of teams to choose from. With constant sunshine, vibrant culture, and natural wonder, Arizona provides a style of living that's entirely unique. People from all over the world call our state home. From student leaders who fill the classrooms of our top-ranked universities, to a skilled and abundant workforce that's ready for what's next. To the neighbors, friends, and peers we interact with daily, Arizonans are united by a pioneering spirit that moves us forward. So as you look to the future, know that it's filled with the perfect balance of innovation and high-quality living that makes life better here.
All right. What do you think, Sandeep? That's your crew.
I know it's great. Actually, I didn't see this before, so
It's-
this
well,
is definitely
We're happy
You
to
know,
share it with you.
yeah,
and
mind catching.
Yeah. I always say every episode, it makes me love being an Arizonan, and I've been here since 1979. So I've got a lot of joy in being here. Before we go on to the next set of questions, as the little commercial was playing for Arizona Commerce Authority, I'm kind of thinking back to the things that Seth and Steve just said before our break. How much of this is education? How important is education to our rural areas and to the tribal nation as we're doing this? Because obviously this is a long-term fix, and it can be expensive. Some of the services are going to be a little varied and different because of where people are. Whose responsibility is it to educate, and how is that done? And how much of it is not only education, but also maybe a little bit of marketing and PR too?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Seth.
Okay, so some of it is it's awareness. Is I don't know. Education is one of the words, right? But it's really awareness that this other way of doing it is okay, right? That you will be taken care of. The fear, and again, I go back to the guy that I talked to. The fear in his eyes of my engineers are telling me I need to do this, but I just don't know what to do. Right? Is I think Kelly and her team do a great job of marketing, what they're doing. And we do marketing. Our CMO, Kira's in Ireland. She was just here for our sales conference this week. We do a great job of that in digital content creation, but it's just making sure that the marketplace, specifically the ISPs, know that there is an alternative and that there is a better way of skinning this cat, right? And a better mousetrap. And that there's somebody that's going to help them. Right. Mm-hmm. They're used to spending these big dollars because they get this big blanket of warmness. And we know that there's CIOs and CTOs out there that they want to sleep at night. And they're not going to sleep at night if they're worried about their network going down. Right. We just can't have that. I mean, it's utility now. So it's as much education as awareness campaigns of, hey, guys, there's another way to do this. Okay.
If I could just ask, and were you also thinking about the individuals?
I am thinking that I'm the recipient, right? I'm the mom. I'm the dad of the kid who is in high school and trying to find a way to have my kids succeed either in my rural area or maybe go to, higher education somewhere else. And if we don't have that infrastructure, I'm wondering as just a community member, as a parent, or even somebody who's working remotely, how independent is it as I continue to serve my own local community? Yeah.
So Karen, I think from an Arizona State broadband perspective, I wouldn't, we normally think it from a partnership standpoint. So for the rural community, I wouldn't say it's more education. COVID taught us everything, basically what we need. The question is how we get that. One of the portfolio we manage, and we're also leading on that, is the digital equity portfolio. When we talk about infrastructure without digital equity, it's basically a highway without any kind of exit sign. So you don't know where to get on, where to get off. So from our standpoint, from our office's standpoint, the state of Arizona received actually $1 million, and we hired a consultant, and we're also developing the same digital equity statewide plan, which will be published on our website. That lays out our vision for next 10 years, that how we will not only promote, how we will fund the telemedicine program here in the state, workforce development program here in the state, the distance learning program here in the state. There are a lot of great projects in a very small scale going on in our rural communities. Libraries are one of the biggest impact. They have the biggest impact in telemedicine, distance learning, providing the community anchor institute service with high-speed broadband. So libraries are one of our great partner in this process. But all of them are the project is stalled in some cases because there is not enough funding. So the IIJ also allocated $2.43 billion for digital equity funding, which will get distributed next year. So when we are talking about infrastructure, education, we are holding monthly calls with the tribes, with the rural government, with the local government, counties, cities, our partners as an ISP. taking their feedback into the process. Our plan is data driven. Basically, the survey we received from them was reflected into the plan. So it's all the partnership we are building and we'll keep building next year before even we deploy a single amount of dollar through BEAD funding. As far as our communities, our local government, our stakeholders are not comfortable, there is no money going out. That's our thought from our process, that we have to all come into one agreement that we are ready to intake this project. Not to mention permitting is a big issue when it comes to broadband infrastructure deployment, working with local government on that too. But how we think it from a stakeholder engagement and partnership project. Our state agencies, they have great program. We just need to partner up with them and make sure it's fulfilling the broadband and digital equity needs. DES has program where they help seniors to sign up for the benefit. See, these are all isolated program. What a state broadband office is trying to bring them together, and that's our target, or that's our mission going forward. Not only deploy the infrastructure, but also bring the digital equity piece of it to make sure that people know how to use the internet in an effective and safely manner.
Perfect. Um, can you briefly tell us how your three organizations work together and what the role of each one is to another? Kelly, you want to start?
Well, yes. So one of the things that a networking software company does is provide the glue that makes everything stick together. So one of the key reasons we've been working with EPS Global for so many years now is that they provide a multitude of offerings, and we provide the software glue to make it run in many different cases. So when you look at the initiative that you're rolling out in Arizona, one thing is for certain: there's no single vendor in any one of these networks. It's an interoperability of between many, many vendors. And so what we bring to the table is allowing all of these vendors to work together with a single software glue.
Very good.
Well said. Yeah.
Seth?
Yeah, so we're the hardware guy, right? But we're the value-added hardware guy. So we do this pre-sale support piece where we ask the customer, what protocols, what are you trying to do? We've got our director of technical engineering. He actually came from one of the largest switch manufacturers in the world. I recruited him over about 8 years ago. He's part of our secret sauce. And that we spend a lot of time with the ISPs going, okay, what exactly are you trying to accomplish? And once we get that protocol stack, we can verify that IP Infusion's the right software. And then we start talking about the hardware. And it's not just even the switch, right? We get to the optics, we get to the cables, we get to figure out exactly what they need. So they get almost a tier 1 experience, but at the tier 3 to tier 4 pricing, so they can leverage more money to service more of these customers.
And Sandeep?
Well, I think the partnership between the state broadband office and the private sector is more important than ever. As Seth mentioned, that's the hardware company right there. And another challenge we are definitely facing right now, we have definitely some nationwide ISPs here in Arizona. However, we have overall small and big 72 ISPs. Out of that, 4 or 5 is nationwide. Everything else is like little mom and pop shop. A lot of them are wireless internet service provider. The competition they are going to face during this BEAD funding, they cannot compete with the big ISPs. They're basically going to get wiped out. So of course, from our workforce and diversified workforce perspective, we're making sure they can survive this whole BEAD funding. One of the approach we are taking a little bit different, probably set up a purchasing co-op where the industry and the ISPs can basically meet. We're not forcing anyone through buying through that purchasing co-op, but I think it's really helpful. The way Seth just mentioned his personal experience working with the ISP owner to survive and what they need. This is true for all across the country, not only here in Arizona. So we have a small ISPs who need direction, who need help. We as a state broadband office, we set up a technical assistance team, and I'm leading that technical assistance team because of my background in telecommunication. And there are small ISPs, they're worried from all the way from the equipment to fiber, because they cannot buy the fiber because they don't have that kind of capital sitting so that they can buy a massive amount of fiber and put it on the shelf. So there are a lot of work need to be done. So I can see a clear partnership between IP Fusion and EPS Global, and companies like that need to work closely with Broadband Office to fill in that gaps, not only on the supply chain, but create the equal opportunity for big ISPs, small ISPs, and mid-sized ISPs. And I see that open network plays a vital role in that, because the software itself can be very, very costly going forward when it comes to upgrade, when it comes to changing technology from one platform to another platform. And I worked in vRAN project before, virtual RAN for AT&T and Verizon, and I know it's doable, it's possible. It's not something we are just thinking or in a research phase. I mean, I think the biggest example I can use that in this space, not in broadband space, but in the equipment space, is Red Hat Linux. That company is surviving for last 25 years. It's all open access. They provide cybersecurity. It's all open access. So if that can survive, I think we can do the exact same thing in the connectivity and telecom space.
So
For our listeners, ISP means Internet Service Provider.
Service provider.
right. So, I mean, that's a great analogy. He just used the Red Hat thing. So I come originally from the server space, doing server design and server deployments for like let's say it's a medical imaging company, right? And so you had a Linux kernel. These weren't Microsoft specific boxes because, nobody wanted to see the blue screen, right? So they were Linux boxes. So Red Hat back in the day was one of the big companies that wrapped services and support around Linux. So really, it was the same thing where we're at today is in what we call the disaggregated space, right? So I have a switch from company X. I've got Kelly software. It's got to get put together. Somebody's got to support it. So it's like rinse and repeat. We're back in the same space we were in the early 2000s. Red Hat's the perfect example because not only did they survive, but they're the ones that got bought by the big guy, right? Big IBM guy for a big dollar amount. And so, people want to be there again. But it took 25 years, right? The white box space, the disaggregated space is about 12 years old right now. So it's still kind of young, right? It's not reached its full maturity. Now IP Infusion's been around for 25 years, right, Kelly?
That's right.
And IP Infusion was writing software for some of the bigger guys, some of the backbone pieces, right? And at one point, about 13 years ago, I think they went, hey, we can move this into this white box thing, right? This is becoming a thing now. Mm-hmm. It's had its little ups and downs, but it's pretty full force now. The biggest fear everybody had, and that's what Red Hat did and what IP Infusion is doing, is the support, right? Is who do I call? And somebody needs to pick up that 1-800 number because there's a problem, right? That's way better than it ever was, right? If you go back to even 2013, 2014, it was a little dicey. But now the hardware's baked, the software's baked. Now we just got to know which one to put together for the customer and move on forward.
So Karen, I've been hogging the mic. So.
I don't know that you have been. This has been. It's nice when we have a conversation and our panelists just run in the direction that we want to go. We only have about 12 minutes left, and we have several questions that Leslie was so kind to prepare for us. So I want to make sure we get them all in. Have we covered how open networking provide an alternative to legacy equipment for broadband services? Have we covered that completely?
I think so, Kelly.
Yeah. The exchange on this has been very good from all the parties.
For sure. Yeah. So what is the experience of your service provider customers who select open networking to deliver their broadband services?
So Kelly, I'll let you take that one first.
Yeah, I'll take the first stab. So what we want to make sure, and this is really important, is that they have the same experience or better than they would have with a traditional or closed system vendor. And on our side, so coming from the software perspective, what needs to happen is it needs to be easy to use. So we've taken great steps to make sure that when they install the software, it runs in a very similar way that they're used to. So if you take a Cisco or a Juniper example, if you've been using those vendors for a long time, our software will be very easy to use because we've designed it to be a similar experience.
So
Support, of course.
Sandeep would appreciate this, Kelly. It's CLI. Right? And so,
Yeah.
Of course.
Right. So it looks just like the tier 1 guys.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
Yeah. CLI command line interface. That's the first step. The second step is performance. So the good news, in the early days, as Seth was mentioning, this has been going on for over a decade now. In the early days, there was not performance parity, but thanks to the latest chipsets from the Silicon Valley vendors, we now have performance parity. Be it a legacy or traditional vendor or a white box with software, you can have similar performance. Of course, support, you need to, what we like to say is one back to pat. So you can call us and we will take care of the entire equation for support. And as EPS Global working with us, they're a perfect vendor to talk to about this. And then finally, just making sure that they have a support resource in terms of attack or other organization that they can call at any time, 24/7.
Yeah, so as Kelly mentioned, right? So we're dealing with multiple vendors on the hardware side, and even in any given network, and even in the white box space, there's going to be multiple vendors, right? Because you're going to need like a cell site gateway or a router, and then you're going to need a switch. So we're going to help put it all together with the optics, the cables, the whole bit, turn it into a recipe. And then what happens is, because it's got IPI software on it, when there's an issue, they're going to call the 1-800 number. IPI is going to pick it up. They're going to do the first level diagnosis. If there is a hardware problem, then they'll come get IPI will come get us. And then we'll go work with the vendors and the manufacturers to solve that problem. Typically, it's not super complicated on the hardware side. It's fans and power supplies and stuff. And we keep spares for that kind of thing, right? So we can overnight parts. Our warehouse is in Indianapolis. That's where we integrate everything as well. So you can get stuff pretty much anywhere in the country relatively quick, right? And then we also have a warehouse in Ireland. And so we've replicated everything that we're doing here. We're actually doing overseas too, because they have the same issues, right?
Of course they do. Sandeep, were you able to say everything you wanted to about the BEAD funding planning?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we covered the BEAD pretty well. But on top of what Seth and Kelly just mentioned, I would like to give this two example. So Steve, we talked about this. You know my background. I was involved in multiple startup in Tucson. One of them was antenna startup. So innovation comes within, so we can be a little bit creative when it comes to how to cover this unserved and underserved area, a little bit non-traditional way compared to any other state. But also at the same time, I would use a real life example. So I'm involved with the broadband space before even COVID. So we ran a small nonprofit, and I was the chief technology officer for that nonprofit, basically deploying open access network in South Phoenix for the kids who did not have any kind of connectivity. It was all donated Ubiquiti equipment, and we flushed them, and we wrote a protocol called Batman protocol. It's an open access protocol to make sure that we are not only providing them some kind of connectivity, we're also maintaining the privacy. Privacy is a big concern, and it will be a growing concern going forward, that how my data is getting used. So we wanted to protect that privacy of the user. So from my experience there, we can definitely tell that open access technology definitely works. And not to mention that we as a user always ask ourselves that why our cell phone bill is so high here in the United States. Europe is not that high. Why US is high? Well, the reason it's high because I worked in both 4G deployment phase and 5G. 4G started approximately 2009 for all the cellular companies here in Arizona. By 2014, 2015 timeline, we completed 100% 4G LTE deployment here in the United States for all the carriers. Within 2 years, we moved into 5G. Now we are replacing all those equipment we did, and now we are putting it back. So at the end of the day, the cost basically get passed on to the customer. If we go into a system where we have the hardware in place, we don't have to go through this kind of massive modification of the existing cell site. Just update the software. That can change the game significantly, and that will create the affordable broadband and cellular connectivity here in the United States. Having said that, from a state broadband perspective, we are encouraging this type of technology to make internet affordable for our citizens here in Arizona, but we are also open for anyone who will provide us a feasible financial and economical project for our project area, how we will deploy the BEAD funding.
What's a good first step into the migration to open networking?
I think to start using the equipment and software, as Kelly mentioned, which is friendly towards the upgrade. You don't have to go through a massive upgrade. I have a family member who actually have a MacBook, but he doesn't like Mac OS. He uses Windows. So the need is there. We just need to find the balance between the need and business case here.
So one of the things that we did, that's a great question, Steve. One of the things that we did is we have a lab, and it's actually in Long Beach where my technical director is. And they can actually dial into the lab. That tells you how long I've been doing this.
Something
right.
like
You
that.
can log into the lab and you can test IPI software. right? So they can start to get a level of comfort
Okay.
instantly by playing with the software, and then we can go through a POC with them, proof of concept, long before they do deployment, right?
Mhm.
So we understand the process on how to migrate them from point A to point B, and make sure that they understand, oh, this isn't as scary as you think it is. Again, 10 years ago it wasn't, but now we've really got it dialed in, right?
Are you using digital twins on the hardware side, so that when they dial in, not only can they use the software, but they can get familiar with the hardware?
So yeah, we've probably got about 10 different brands of hardware in the lab now. I think he's got 3 racks.
Okay.
So if he needs to move the IPI software onto a different rack, I mean, there's hardware specs that you have to adhere to for running their software too, right? And also depending on what they're trying to do. Again, is it cell site gateways, a router, that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, we literally can, and he's typically there when he's not on the road with me traveling around to customers, right? He can help them log in, and they don't need a lot of time, right, to actually go in and go, oh, okay, this is all right, I see it, I'm good, right? Now let me test some protocols and start doing, okay, that'll convince them to go to the next level and do the POC.
Well, I think we only have 4 minutes left.
Yeah,
So you want to take us home?
Let's talk about, just briefly, if we could. I think we've hit a lot of high notes for the key wins that are taking place to bridge the efforts of the digital divide. What other key wins do you have? And then also, what are some of the challenges that we haven't discussed that we need to overcome?
From my standpoint, I mean, I think it's all partnership. As I said, this is a $1 billion funding. The timeline is short, and we have to deploy this network because it's a law. It's not a choice at this point that we can leave some household behind. So the perfect partnership between our local government, tribal government, government agencies, and the biggest driving factor, companies, vendor, equipment provider, and ISPs, all need to come together and work. That's why if you look at the BEAD NOFO or guidance, it's all about a stakeholder engagement. It's very less, I wouldn't say less, it's focuses equally on the finance and technology part, and also the stakeholder engagement. So Broadband Office is ready to hear from anyone and everyone, and we are open for any kind of partnership. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that your voice is heard during this whole planning process.
Sandeep, you may have to explain what a NOFO is to our audience.
Sure, it's the guideline, notice of funding opportunity. So if you go to broadband NTIA.gov, it's basically part of U.S. Department of Commerce. They're responsible for deploying these $1 billion, $43 billion for the states and U.S. territories. There are guidance, there are timeline there. I worked in 3 different federal broadband funding. This is the most articulated, well put together, and really within the compliance guidance, and it's the best program I have ever worked on before in my life, funded by federal government. In most of the cases, we get the money and then we set the timeline and guideline and everything. This is basically, we know how much we are getting, but until we go through the whole planning process, we are not able to access the money.
Other comments?
So you can go to our website, EPSglobal.com, www.EPSglobal, and we have an ISP landing page. That's how dedicated we are to this whole ISP initiative and helping with this. So yeah, I mean, that'll kind of get you started. We've got regional managers throughout the country. Obviously, if anything in Arizona, it'll just come to me and they can ask more questions. Typically, then I go get George, technical director, and here you talk to him and he'll help them out. And then we go get Kelly and her team and Saeed or somebody like that on their side, and we get some calls going together, and again try and determine the protocols and where they're trying to go and help them.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, other wins and challenges?
Yeah, I was going to say that's right, because our opportunity and challenge together is general awareness. So oftentimes we do not have the luxurious marketing budgets, so our brand isn't as well distributed around the industry. So what we bring to the table is, as soon as we have success lighting up a community with connectivity, we like to announce it. So we like to announce our customer wins, and that's what we've been doing together with EPS Global over the past couple of years to show it can be done. Here's how we did it, and here's the success.
Very cool.
Fantastic.
By the way, we can help amplify that too here in Arizona when those lights go on. So please let us know.
Yes, let us know.
I'm ready to write. I'm ready to write.
Good. We're ready to write and ready to celebrate. This has been a fantastic conversation, and we're really appreciative of all three of you with giving your time and your expertise today. You've been listening to AZ TechCast, brought to you by Phoenix Business Radio X with Arizona Commerce Authority and, of course, Arizona Technology Council. Today's AZ TechCast was brought to you by Arizona Commerce Authority, the state's leading economic development organization with a streamlined mission to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy. So we always appreciate Arizona Commerce Authority when we're here in the studio once a month. If you're interested in being a podcast participant or a sponsor to the Council's AZ TechCast, then contact marketing@aztechcouncil.org to learn more about opportunities to further position you as a tech expert, an influencer, and an innovator. Until next time, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thank you for joining AZ TechCast.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of AZ TechCast with Arizona Technology Council, featuring leading tech and business experts that help influence and shape our great state and the industries they serve.